This series shouldn't be called Heartstopper. If it were honest, it would be called Heartstarter, because it made me feel alive again. After consuming this media, I no longer feel dead inside.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago.
You guys asked for it.
What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, where today we are going to be doing a review of Heartstopper, both the webcomic turned book series, now turned Netflix series, and the Netflix show as well, because I have a lot of thoughts on it and I want to share them with you guys. But before we get into that, don't forget to click subscribe if you're interested in new videos about books and business multiple times a week, but always every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Heartstopper is great because it is an amalgamation of different types of queer media. It has LGBTQ plus characters from all across the spectrum in webcomic form, in book form, and in Netflix show form, which is great. And if queer fiction and LGBTQ media is something that you guys are interested in, you can find even more of that on my website, where I have books like 90s Kids and Sculpt Yourself available, which are women romances and things like that. That is what I am all about. And if you decide to go on my website and check those things out, you may notice, hey Savvy, this website looks great. Well, that's because I built it with today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Zyro, a website builder which I use to create my own website, SAVYWritesBooks.com, which is linked in the description below. I'm very grateful to Zyro for sponsoring me because they provided me with a tool that I really needed. An easy-to-use, user-friendly website builder, just as I was revamping my website at the end of 2021. Zyro allowed me to create a website where I could feature my various projects, including this channel, my morning show Your Morning Guru, my novels, and more, plus put everything into a neatly organized online shop. Zyro lets anyone create an amazing website and launch a professional online store without any need for coding skills or prior web design experience. They also have some really great tools that you can try. For example, you can use Zyro's artificial intelligence tools to build your website. These AI tools will do a lot of the initial legwork for you. You can select what you'd like to see in your website, generate it with the AI generator, and then adjust everything to your liking. Zyro's tools can also help you make your own logo, edit your photos, remove backgrounds, and more. Best of all, Zyro is super affordable for those looking to start a website, so if you're interested in creating a website of your own, you can use Zyro's limited time deal where you can get a discount of up to 71% off a custom domain and 3 months free with any yearly plan. To access this special discount, use the code SAVVY or click the link in my description box below. Thank you so much again to Zyro for sponsoring this video. Guys, check out the links in the description below and use code SAVVY for a limited time deal. So thank you so much to my sponsor. Thank you also to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate you guys making this channel what it is. I have linked Patreon supporters in the description below. Supporters who give $5 a month and up have the option to link their own businesses or social media or causes or whatever. So go ahead and check out those links down below. So before the review, let's talk about what is Heartstopper. Heartstopper is a webcomic created by Alicia Paz. The webcomic got pretty big, and the webcomic was then turned into a book series. The book series ties into the universes of a lot of her other books as well. I read the book series starting a couple years ago when they first started getting published in paperback and printed in the US. She lives in the UK, so she's a British author, so the books would get published over there first. You can read the whole webcomic as far as it's updated right now online, and she still updates it regularly, which is really awesome. And then they get published into book form periodically, so I would read them in book form, get them in paperback. Just this past month, the series got adapted to Netflix in what is currently an 8-episode series, and that 8-episode series covers basically the first 2 books worth of comics. And I will say that I think this was a shockingly faithful adaptation of webcomic to book to TV series. There were a few things changed that I didn't really understand why they were changed, but overall it didn't really affect my immersion, and it had the exact same feeling and overall emotional connections that the story had in webcomic form, so I was really appreciative of that. So when I talk about the things that I like about the story, that's going to be about the book and about the show, because they're very similar in a lot of ways and the plot kind of resonated in the same way. When I talk about some of the controversies that have started surrounding it, that is mostly going to be about the show, because the book didn't really have that many controversies. I think it was pretty universally loved. I've never seen any bad reviews of it. I'm sure they're out there because there's people who don't like everything, but when the books came out, I pretty much saw exclusively positive reviews because they're very wholesome and sweet, and it's really hard to find something you don't like. But of course, whenever something becomes a TV show and gets mainstream, there's always going to be discourse about everything out there. Let's talk about what I really liked about the overall story, whether that be in book form or TV show form. The first thing would be that I love, and this is not going to come as a shock to any of you guys if you have seen anything on my channel before, but that it is filled with explicit and outwardly stated bisexual representation. That is a thing that we have far too little of in media, whether that be books or TV shows, especially within mainstream and very popular media. So it was really fantastic to get to see that play out on the screen. So the context of that, Heartstopper is the story of a boy named Charlie who is in high school, who the previous year had gotten involved in some type of controversy that led to him being outed as gay against his will, which is horrible, and he suffered through a lot of bullying as a result of that. This takes place the following school year, where he is a sophomore. I mean, this is British school, so I think they call it year 10 or whatever. He's basically a high school sophomore, and he gets paired up in homeroom with this other kid named Nick, who is a high school junior. And Nick is slightly older than him, he's bigger, he's the rugby star of the school, he's a popular guy, and he's unfortunately friends with a lot of the kids who used to bully Charlie. But Nick ends up being kind of like a puppy dog type of guy. You can basically compare him to a golden retriever. He's very sweet and kind of an idiot when it comes to noticing what his friends are doing, but it's about his journey also of learning to stand up to his friends and not let them bully people, and the friendship that grows with Charlie, and then eventually their relationship as Nick later discovers that he's actually bisexual. So it's fantastic. I loved that plot. I love that there is a coming out scene that, spoilers, sorry, Nick has a coming out scene with his friends and with his mom and things like that, and I think it's really fantastic that that was explicitly stated in the text and on screen. It wasn't just like a I'm never gonna label it thing, which, just to be clear, if you never want to label your sexuality ever, you don't have to, and that's okay, and I'm fine with seeing that on screen too. It's just that I've seen that enough times already that I really wanted to see more of somebody being confident in being bisexual, specifically as a teenage boy, because we don't see that very much almost ever, and I thought that that was amazing. The other thing that I really liked was the trans representation in this show as well. So this show, as I mentioned, features characters from all across the LGBTQ spectrum, which I thought was fantastic. One of the plots in this show is that one of Charlie's friends is a transgender girl named Elle, and Elle had previously gone to their school, which is an all-boys school, but as she started to transition, she moved over to the all-girls school, which is, you know, next door instead. And so it was about that path. And I thought what was really interesting was the relationship between her and one of their other friends, who's a guy named Tao, who's kind of like the token straight guy in the group. He and Elle had been best friends all through childhood, back to when she was still presenting male, and he had still thought of her as a guy friend. And then when she transitioned, you know, he starts to have this realization of like, you know, she's actually kind of cute, which is an interesting thing for him to go through, of that discovery of like, we were friends and I thought it was under different circumstances, and now we're actually starting to have a little bit of romantic chemistry, and like that's a really interesting dynamic for friends to have to navigate. So I thought that was really cool to take a look at within that show. I also loved that Elle's story of being a trans girl wasn't explicitly about trauma or about adversity with transition, and while obviously there were some difficult things she had to face, as is to be expected in our world today where trans people still don't have a lot of equal rights in a lot of areas, the majority of her story didn't focus on that, and instead focused on, you know, what it was like being a new student in the girls' school for the first year. She ends up befriending two girls who are actually a lesbian couple, and they all become best friends, and they start to join everyone else's friend group. And overall, the story's mostly about the formation of a new friend group, which kind of leads me into the next thing that I loved about this, which is that it wasn't an overly hyper-dramatized version of high school. I've noticed that so much in so many series. You guys know I love Degrassi. I will watch Degrassi all day, while on Your Morning Guru, RK and I will make fun of Canada and watch Degrassi. I like Degrassi as a meme. I think it's way too over-dramatized. And nowadays you've got a lot of shows that are things like Euphoria, which I think are over-sexualized, and I hope I don't offend anyone with this, but I've talked about it on Twitter. I refuse to watch shows like Euphoria because I'm not okay with incentivizing people to portray characters that are minors being involved in explicit sexual interactions. And like, that's not for me to say that you're not allowed to talk about sexual interactions with younger characters, because, you know, it's important to address these topics and educate kids about sex and things like that, and about how to be safe. But I didn't like that I'd heard that in the show Euphoria, you'd have characters who were doing like full nudity scenes and were having like sex scenes with them playing characters who are minors. I found that gross. Like, I'm not comfortable with that whatsoever. And people would make the argument like, oh, but they're adult actors. I'm like, yeah, that's why I know they're adult actors. That's why I'm just choosing not to watch the show instead of calling the police, dude. If they were not adult actors, this would be a whole different story where we'd get the law involved. But that was the thing that kind of makes me incredibly uncomfortable. So I really liked seeing a show that was not over-sexualized, that you had characters, you know, and they would kiss on screen and things like that, but they were navigating new romantic feelings for the first time, going through puberty and all of those changes and things like that. And I think that that is really important to have shows like that for teenagers to watch, that don't make everything, you know, the absolute highest stakes it can possibly be. I just think that's fantastic. I think that it's great that it's more on that level. It felt more believable to me, and maybe that's because my teenage life was just not super dramatic, but the show felt believable. Those, you know, inner conflicts that you have with your friend group that might seem like a big deal when you're a teenager, but aren't that big of a deal when you're adult. It wasn't just constant life or death circumstances, and I thought that made for a lot more of an immersive show for my personal teenage experience, and I really liked that about it. And also, I just think we need a lot more queer stories in general that aren't focused on sexualization elements of it, because there aren't enough out there, I don't think. I think that we need more that are focused on emotion and focused on friendship dynamics and things like that, so I really loved that about it. Now, I did notice a few controversies coming out around the show specifically. One of those things I had a real issue with. So when I was on Twitter, I would notice a lot of people talking about, do the actors portray characters who actually share their LGBTQ identities? And that was the thing people would talk about. So I don't really like this line of discourse. I made a video about a year ago now about Becky Albertalli, whom I've since become friends with, which is fantastic. She's amazing. But she's the author of Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, a very popular LGBTQ novel, which since became the movie Love, Simon. And if you guys don't remember, she had a whole controversy where people kept accusing her of being a straight author trying to capitalize on queer stories. She wasn't straight, she was just closeted, and basically that line of consistent criticism and harassment made her feel pressured to have to come out. And so I really hate when I see people trying to question people about what their sexual orientation is and trying to make them come out about it. Because, yeah, I understand that there can be something special about having a show where the actors are also part of the LGBTQ community. And the actor who plays Charlie, the main character, actually is out as gay, so I think that that's pretty awesome. But the actor who plays Nick has not talked about his sexuality publicly at all. And a lot of people I've seen on Twitter kind of badgering him about it and asking him, like, well, Nick is bi, are you actually bi? And it's like, dude, he's a teenager. So you shouldn't even do that to an adult, but you especially should not do that to a teenager. So, like, y'all gotta stop doing that. Like, it's inappropriate. It makes people feel incredibly uncomfortable, and it's overall just, like, I just don't think it's a respectful way to navigate these discussions, especially because not everyone is in a position where talking about these things publicly is going to be okay in their personal life. Even if they are someone who's famous, and even if they are publicly, you know, promoting LGBTQ causes. As I've mentioned before, I've been somebody who would publicly talk about LGBTQ rights since I was like a kid. I was really into this. People would have thought of me as an overinvested ally. We all know how that turns out, right? But I didn't actually come out until I was 24, despite the fact that I was already writing queer stories. I was, you know, writing books that I was going to publish. Almost all of the books that I wrote and stories that I wrote in college and in high school often had two women in relationships together, and that was just kind of how I did things. But I was still not out publicly about that until I was 24, when I finally felt comfortable with it. And so I just don't think it's right to try to put that pressure on people. I don't like that. So if you've been out here doing that, you need to put a stop to it. Stop it right now. The other, you know, criticism I've seen is sometimes people saying like, well, this show's a little too tame. And again, refer back to the things I liked. No, there are plenty of shows where you have stories about, you know, drugs, violence, you know, explicit sexual content. You have plenty of other things about that if you want to see that. This show is specifically about the inner workings of a friendship dynamic group as people discover their sexual orientations. It's a lot more low key, and I actually really like that about it. I think it's really beneficial for teenagers to have that type of story, to know that like you can have an amazing teenage experience without having to have constant drama. The other main controversy I noticed is this, which I really want to talk about in particular. So in the show specifically, as Charlie is starting to develop feelings for Nick, and they're starting to hang out more, and they're starting to go places, there's this girl that hangs out with Nick and his rugby friends and like the popular crowd at school, and her name's Imogen, and she and Nick hang out together a lot, and she eventually asks him on a date. Nick agrees to go on the date because in the moment he kind of feels bad for her. So they decide to go on the date, and later he's realizing that he's actually starting to get feelings for Charlie, so he's like, maybe I shouldn't go on this date with her. A lot of people I noticed on Twitter, because, you know, everyone's, you know, shipping Nick and Charlie so hard, a lot of people would start hating Imogen and being like, this bitch needs to get out of here, she's ruining this and stuff, and it was like, do not direct a misogyny at her, like, that's not fair. She's just a girl who was friends with him and was trying to have a relationship, and when their relationship doesn't work out in the show, it's actually incredibly mature how they handle it, and I was honestly really impressed, because a lot of teenagers would not handle a situation that maturely. A lot of teenage breakups are just, you know, absolute emotions everywhere. In this case, they both kind of came to a mutual understanding and realized, you know what, we don't really fit together as people, and we're kind of going down different paths in life, and that's okay. But I think the fact that there was such a backlash against this character leads to a larger discussion of the fact that we don't often see bisexual men dating women in media. We don't see it that much in books, in movies, in TV, because, again, I've talked about this in the past, a lot of times if you want to have something as this is a queer story, a LGBTQ story, people assume that that means, okay, so we're going to mostly see same-sex couples. But the thing is, if you're showing people over a long period in their lives, especially in developmental stages of their life, it absolutely makes sense that they're going, especially if they're a bisexual character, they're going to be dating people of multiple different genders. Not always, but it's absolutely believable and realistic to expect that. So when people get really weird about like, oh my god, this male character is dating this female character, that's absolutely unacceptable, and then they get mad about it, it always sounds like misogyny to me. Like, it always comes off as misogyny. And I don't know if it is, but here's what I've determined, right? Because on this channel, I've reviewed the book, The Straight Girl's Guide to Sleeping with Chicks. So you get these cases where, like, you regularly see, okay, well, you can have sex with women as another woman and still be straight, but if you have sex with a man as another man, you are automatically gay. And then people like erase bisexual people, right? But the way they erase them is always by claiming women are straight and men are gay. And here's why I think that is. I could be totally wrong, but I personally do think it stems back to misogyny, because the implication is that women in this case are sex objects, right? That's where this comes from. It's like, okay, this man has sex with men and women. Well, obviously, he could still be gay, because obviously gay men have sex with women, because everyone has sex with women. This woman could be straight even though she has sex with women, because of course straight women have sex with women. Everyone has sex with women. Having sex with women is the default because women are sex objects. That's where I feel like a lot of this stems from. And so I really have an issue with that. And I would just really like to see more media where we see a bisexual male character date a woman on the page. Luckily, I'm writing a bunch of stuff where that kind of thing happens right now, so just stay tuned for more stuff. But my point is, I liked Imogen as a character. I think that her growth and her maturity in the way she handled certain situations was very well done, and I think that any hate she's gotten online is absolutely misogynistic in nature, based on my personal perception. I could be wrong. Someone might hate her for a different reason, who knows. But anyway, that was something that I kind of had an issue with. But overall, I thought that the series was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to season 2. I love the dog characters. I love that there's dogs doing cute dog stuff. That makes me happy. So I highly recommend everyone check it out. It was a great show to watch. I highly recommend you read the books and read the webcomic. I can't wait to see more of it. This is the first time I've reviewed fiction in a while on this channel. I've been reviewing nonfiction so much lately, self-help books, bad business books, that kind of thing. It's been a long time since I reviewed fiction, but I figured I had read the series and I just finished watching the show on Netflix and I thought it was fantastic, so thought I'd do a little positive video for you guys today instead of a video complaining about things. I hope that's still enjoyable to you, but we'll be back to more business guru scam shit on Friday. I hope you guys enjoy this. I will see you guys again then. In the meantime, keep on supporting small businesses, keep on reading LGBTQ stories, and have a fantastic day. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago.
You guys asked for it.